It all started when I thought I had everything figured out. I was in a relationship with Alicia for almost 5 years. We met in college, fell in love quickly, and it felt like we were this perfect match. She was everything I had ever wanted. Beautiful, funny, ambitious. Everything that seemed like it would make a life together feel secure. But as the years went by, things started to change. The cracks began showing in ways I couldn't ignore anymore. I didn't notice it right away, not at first. It's funny how you can be with someone for years and suddenly realize there's something off. It starts small. She became more distant, more consumed by her job. Alicia was a marketing director, and her career was everything to her. It wasn't a bad thing at first. I admired her work ethic. But then, it was as if work became her excuse for everything. She'd cancel plans with me, stay late at the office, or claim she was too tired for anything else. I thought maybe I was being too needy, that I should let her breathe. It wasn't just the distance that bothered me, though. It was the little lies. The ones I could tell were lies even though they didn't seem like much. Like the time she said she'd been at a work dinner, but the details didn't add up. Or when I found out she had gone out with her friends after claiming she was going to the gym. I brushed it off, convinced it was nothing. But deep down, I started feeling like I was losing something important, something that had always been there. I told myself that maybe I was just overthinking things. I tried to ignore the growing feeling of unease, but the doubts kept growing, gnawing at me. One night, I found myself sitting on the couch, scrolling through my phone, trying not to think too much. Alicia had gone to bed early, claiming she was exhausted after a long day. I didn't even argue. I was used to it by now, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right. That's when I saw the message. It was from an unknown number. I hesitated for a moment before I clicked on it, my heart already pounding. The message was simple: "Can't wait to see you tonight." There was no name attached, no clue as to who it could be. My stomach dropped. I knew right then that it wasn't a coincidence. The blood rushed to my head as I tried to steady myself. Maybe I was just overreacting. I scrolled up through her conversations, hoping for some sign of clarity. But there it was, an exchange with a man named Mark, someone I had never heard of. The tone was casual at first, but as I read further, the messages became more flirtatious, more intimate. The kind of text that a person sends to someone they're not supposed to be texting. I felt sick to my stomach. Alicia, my Alicia, was having an affair. The shock hit me like a tidal wave, and I couldn't breathe for a moment. The idea of it didn't make sense. Alicia wasn't that kind of person, was she? She'd always been so loving, so attentive, or at least I thought she had been. But now, looking at these messages, I saw the truth laid bare in front of me. There was no denying it. She was seeing someone else, someone I didn't even know about, and for God knows how long. I didn't confront her right away. I couldn't. Part of me still didn't want to believe it. But I couldn't go on pretending that everything was okay. I was torn between confronting her and waiting for her to tell me herself. But I knew that if I didn't act soon, I'd lose whatever was left of myself in this relationship. The next day, when Alicia came home from work, she acted like nothing had happened. She kissed me on the cheek, asked how my day went, as if I hadn't just uncovered her secret. She looked tired, but I could tell she was trying to act normal, like she didn't have a care in the world. I didn't know how to start. My mind was racing, my thoughts scattered. Should I be calm, collected, and ask her directly? Or should I lay it all out, tell her what I'd seen, and let her deal with the consequences? But I couldn't stay silent. Not anymore. I waited for the right moment, trying to keep my breathing steady, my voice even. But when I finally spoke, I could barely get the words out. "Alicia, I need to ask you something. I found something last night." She froze for a second, the color draining from her face. I could see the realization hit her, and that's when I knew. She knew. She didn't try to deny it, at least not immediately. Instead, she just looked at me, her expression hard to read. "What did you find?" she asked, her voice quieter than usual. I didn't want to go into the details, not yet. I didn't want to give her the chance to twist the truth, so I just said, "The messages. From Mark." "What's going on, Alicia?" She stood there for a moment, her mouth opening and closing, like she was searching for the right words. I could see the guilt in her eyes, but she didn't apologize. She didn't explain herself. Instead, she did something I didn't expect. She turned her back to me, crossing her arms in front of her chest like she was shielding herself from me. "I don't know what you want me to say," she said, her voice flat. "I've been unhappy for a while. You don't get it." The words hit me like a slap across the face. Unhappy? For a while? All this time, I had been wondering what was wrong, and she hadn't said a word. Not once. She kept it all inside until it had built up to the point where she'd found someone else to fill the void. I could feel the anger rising in me. The betrayal. How could she keep this from me for so long? How could she lie to my face, pretending everything was fine when it wasn't? My hands balled into fists at my sides, but I kept my voice steady, fighting back the tears. "You could have told me. You could have been honest. But instead, you chose to lie. To cheat. Do you even care about what you've done?" Alicia didn't say anything at first. She just stood there, her arms crossed, staring at the floor. It was like she was waiting for me to say something else, but there was nothing else to say. I didn't know if I wanted an explanation anymore. I wasn't sure what I wanted, but what I did know was that I couldn't keep living like this. Not anymore. For the first time in a long while, I thought about what it would be like to just walk away. I didn't know if I could forgive her. I didn't know if I even wanted to try. The whole foundation of our relationship had crumbled in an instant, and I wasn't sure how to pick up the pieces. But one thing was clear. I couldn't stay in this toxic mess any longer. The silence hung heavy between us after her confession. Alicia's eyes were still fixed on the floor, her arms tightly crossed, like she was trying to protect herself from whatever was coming next. I didn't know what I expected her to say, but I sure as hell didn't expect that. "I've been unhappy for a while." The words echoed in my head, drowning out the sound of my heartbeat pounding in my ears. Unhappy? How had I not noticed? How had I missed all the signs, all the small moments where she'd been slipping away? The guilt twisted in my gut. But more than anything, I was furious. Furious at myself for letting her get away with so much. Furious at her for breaking my trust in the worst way possible. I couldn't stay in this room with her. Not right now. The tension was suffocating. My mind was spinning, and my hands were shaking. I needed space. I needed to breathe. I grabbed my keys off the table without saying another word and walked out of the apartment, leaving Alicia standing there, still avoiding my gaze. I didn't even know where I was going as I walked down the street. I didn't have a destination in mind. I just needed to get away from her, away from the apartment, away from everything that had felt so safe. Everything felt like a lie now. I ended up at a bar a few blocks away, half empty and dimly lit. I didn't want to talk to anyone, didn't want any distractions. I just wanted to drown out the anger and the confusion with alcohol, with something that could make me forget for just a little while. The bartender slid a drink in front of me without saying a word. I wasn't sure if he could sense I needed it, or if it was just his usual routine, but I didn't care. I took a sip, the burn of whiskey hitting my throat. It didn't help. Nothing did. I didn't even realize how much time had passed until I checked my phone. It was almost midnight. I'd been sitting there for hours, letting the alcohol blur my thoughts, but it only made things worse. My phone buzzed on the counter. A text from Alicia. "Can we talk? Please." I stared at the screen for a while, my thumb hovering over the reply button. I wanted to scream at her, tell her to leave me alone, but at the same time, I couldn't ignore that lingering part of me that wanted answers. I had been in this relationship for 5 years. I couldn't just shut it all out in one night, not without hearing what she had to say. I reluctantly typed a response. "I don't know if I'm ready to talk yet." Her reply came almost instantly. "Please, I don't want to lose you. I'm sorry. I fucked up." I didn't reply right away. The words sounded so empty, so rehearsed. I couldn't decide if I was angry enough to walk away for good, or if I was just too heartbroken to let her go. It was easy to imagine myself walking out of the bar and never looking back, but was I strong enough to do that? Was I really ready to leave behind everything we had, all the memories we'd built together, just because she'd made a huge mistake? I could hear the sound of her voice in my head, her sweet laugh, her soft touch. We'd been happy once, or at least I thought we had. But now it all felt so fake. I hated that she'd made me doubt everything. I hated that I wasn't sure if I could trust my own judgment anymore. The bartender slid another drink in front of me, his expression giving nothing away. I didn't even know if I wanted it, but I picked it up anyway. It didn't taste as good as the first one. I didn't care anymore. A few minutes passed before my phone buzzed again. Another text from Alicia. Please, let's talk. I've been thinking about everything, and I know I fucked up, but I swear I didn't want to hurt you. I was scared, and I didn't know how to fix it. Scared? Was that supposed to be an explanation for all the lies? All the secret texts, the late nights, the excuses? I didn't know how to feel about that. What was I supposed to do with that? What was the point of all this, Alicia? I finally typed. Why didn't you just talk to me? Why didn't you come to me when things started going wrong? The answer came slowly, as if she was carefully choosing her words. I didn't know how. I didn't know how to talk to you about the way I was feeling. I was scared that you'd leave me if I told you the truth. I read the message over and over, trying to make sense of it. She was scared? Scared of losing me? But instead of being honest, she had lied. She had turned to someone else. She had let it go on for who knows how long. And now she was asking for forgiveness? My anger was rising again. I felt like I was trapped in this whirlpool of conflicting emotions. Hurt, betrayal, confusion, and now, pity. I didn't want to feel sorry for her. I didn't want to excuse what she had done, but part of me still cared, still loved her, and that made everything worse. I stood up abruptly, grabbing my jacket and slinging it over my shoulder. I didn't know where I was going, but I couldn't sit there any longer. I wasn't going to find the answers I needed in this bar. I needed to confront Alicia. I had to hear her side of the story, even if I wasn't sure I could ever forgive her. I walked out into the cold night, the chill biting at my skin, but it felt good. I needed the clarity. I needed the sharpness of reality to cut through the fog of confusion. I didn't want to feel sorry for her anymore. I didn't want to be the person who stayed with someone because I was too afraid to be alone. But damn, the idea of walking away from 5 years, from everything we had built together, wasn't as easy as it seemed. The questions kept swirling in my mind, but one thing was clear. I wasn't sure if I was ready to forgive her, but I couldn't just walk away without knowing everything, without getting the answers I needed. I headed back toward the apartment, my heart heavy but determined. Whatever happened next, I needed to face it head-on. No more running. I walked back to the apartment slowly, every step feeling heavier than the last. The cold night air seemed to match the weight in my chest. I didn't want to go back to that apartment, not yet, not after everything. But the closer I got, the more I realized I didn't have much of a choice. I couldn't keep running from this. Whatever was left between Alicia and me, whatever we could salvage, I needed to face it. As I reached the front door of our building, my phone buzzed again. It was Alicia. I'm sorry, please just let me explain. I swear I'll make it right. Please. I stared at the screen for a moment, considering my options. The words felt desperate, almost too desperate. Was she truly sorry? Or was she just scrambling to fix something she'd broken beyond repair? Either way, I wasn't ready to forgive her, but I knew I couldn't ignore her. I swiped open the message and typed back, I'm coming up. There was no point in dragging this out any longer. I needed to hear her side of the story, no matter how much I didn't want to. So I pushed open the door to the building and walked up the stairs to our floor. The sound of my footsteps seemed so loud in the otherwise quiet hallway. Each one echoed like a countdown to something I wasn't sure I was ready for. When I reached our door, I hesitated. What the hell was I even going to say to her? Was I supposed to be angry? Should I be calm? Was I supposed to act like nothing had changed? I didn't know how to be around her anymore. She had been the center of my world for 5 years, but now, with every passing minute, I could feel that foundation cracking. I rang the doorbell, and within seconds, she was there. She opened the door, her face a mix of nervousness and relief, like she'd been holding her breath, waiting for this moment. Alec, she whispered, stepping aside to let me in. I'm glad you came back. I didn't respond. I couldn't. My throat felt tight, and any words I tried to say just seemed to catch in my chest. The room was quiet, too quiet. She gestured toward the couch, but I didn't sit. Instead, I stood in the middle of the room, trying to make sense of everything. Alicia started, her voice shaky, but then she stopped, her eyes scanning my face, looking for something. Maybe for signs that I wasn't completely done with her. I didn't know how to tell you. I didn't want to hurt you. Then why did you? My voice came out harsher than I intended. Why the lies, Alicia? Why the hiding? Why the secret messages, the late nights? You made it seem like everything was fine when it wasn't. Her eyes welled up, and for a second, I thought I saw something close to real remorse in them. But then, the anger and hurt came rushing back. I couldn't just fall for her tears. Not this time. I don't know, she said, wiping her eyes. I was scared. I didn't want to lose you, Alec, but I didn't know how to deal with everything. And when I met Brian, it felt like I could breathe again. I didn't want to hurt you. I never wanted to hurt you. My stomach turned. Brian. That name felt like a slap in the face. She didn't just make a mistake. She'd gone to someone else, and now she was trying to justify it by calling it an escape? Escaping doesn't mean cheating, Alicia. I shot back, my voice low and rough. It's not the same thing. You don't just go off and have an affair because you're scared. You talk to the person you're with. You tell them what's wrong. You don't lie and hide and then act like everything is fine. You don't betray their trust like that. I know, she said, her voice cracking as she stepped closer to me. I'm so sorry. I was stupid. I thought I could fix things by myself, but I was only making it worse. I didn't know how to fix it with you, and I thought Brian could make me feel better, that it would make everything clearer, but it didn't. It made everything worse. You're right, I muttered, rubbing my temples. It did make everything worse. You didn't think of me, Alicia. You didn't think about what we had. You took the easy way out. I could feel my emotions bubbling up inside me, but I had to keep it together. I couldn't just let her pull me back into this whirlwind of excuses. She had to understand the gravity of what she'd done. She needed to know that the trust we built for years was shattered now. I didn't know if I could ever get that back. Please, Alec, she whispered, looking up at me with pleading eyes. I love you. I don't want to lose you. I couldn't look at her anymore. I turned away, pacing the room to try and shake the weight of her words off. Love? How could she love me and do that to me? The betrayal stung so deeply that the idea of forgiveness felt like a foreign concept. Do you really? I asked, my voice unsteady. Because if you loved me, you wouldn't have hurt me like this. You wouldn't have lied. You wouldn't have pushed me aside for someone else. You would have come to me. She was silent, and for a moment, I almost thought she was going to say something else. But nothing came. I turned to face her. I don't know if I can forgive you. I'm not sure I can ever look at you the same way again. Her face crumpled, and she collapsed onto the couch, burying her face in her hands. The tears came harder now, and my anger softened, but only a little. I wanted to feel sorry for her. I wanted to comfort her, but I couldn't bring myself to do it. I'm sorry, she choked out between sobs. I'm so sorry, Alec. I'll do anything to make it right. I swear. I didn't mean for any of this to happen. I was so messed up and I thought, I can't keep doing this, I said, cutting her off. I can't keep going in circles. I don't know if I want to try to fix this. Her shoulders shook as she looked up at me, her face a mixture of pleading and regret. Please, Alec. Please don't leave me. I love you. I stared at her for a long time. The words she'd said were genuine. I could see that. But what did they mean now? Could I really trust her again? Could I get past what she'd done? I didn't have the answers, and right now, I wasn't sure I even cared to find them. I turned and walked toward the door. I need space, Alicia. I need time to think. I didn't look back as I stepped into the hallway, but I could hear her sobs through the door. The noise, the hurt. It echoed in my mind, but I still couldn't shake the feeling that I was doing the right thing. I needed to find my clarity before I could even think about making a decision. But for now, all I wanted was peace. And that meant walking away. The next few days were a blur of uncertainty. I stayed at a friend's apartment, crashing on their couch while I tried to piece together what the hell had happened. I had never been good at handling emotions, especially when they felt like they were drowning me. I tried to stay busy, meeting up with people, keeping my mind occupied, but everything felt like it was on the edge of falling apart. Every time I closed my eyes, Alicia's face appeared in my mind, tear-streaked and desperate. I couldn't get the image of her pleading look out of my head, and it made my stomach churn. The part of me that still loved her, if it even was love anymore, kept fighting against the anger and betrayal. I wanted to move past it. I wanted to believe that things could somehow go back to how they were, but the more I thought about what she'd done, the harder it became to see any way forward. I stopped responding to her texts, her calls, anything. I felt guilty, like I was shutting her out, but I knew I needed space. I needed to clear my head, even if it meant hurting her more. There was only so much I could take, and I wasn't sure I had the energy left to give her anything. One night, a week after I left, I decided to go back to the apartment. I wasn't sure what I was expecting. Maybe some kind of closure? Or maybe just to grab my things and make sure I wasn't leaving anything important behind. But when I stood in front of the door, I hesitated again. The building felt different now, like a place I didn't belong. I knocked. It felt strange, but I had to do it. I couldn't let this linger forever, like an unfinished story. Alicia opened the door, her face pale and drawn. She was thinner, like she hadn't been eating, or maybe just sleeping too much. Her eyes looked tired, like she hadn't been sleeping either. "Alec," she said softly, her voice shaking as she stepped back to let me in. There was no smile, no relief in her expression, just a deep, lingering sadness that I couldn't ignore. I nodded but didn't say anything as I stepped inside. The apartment felt colder now, emptier. It was the same, but everything was different. "I'm not here to fight," I said, cutting to the chase. I didn't want to keep going in circles. I just needed to know where we stood. Alicia swallowed hard and nodded, her eyes searching mine. "I know. I just need you to know how sorry I am. I've been a mess, Alec. I don't know what happened to me." "Don't." My voice was firmer this time, more controlled. "Don't try to make excuses. You did what you did, and now we're here. We can't just pretend it didn't happen." She flinched at my words, but I wasn't going to sugarcoat it. I had been trying to convince myself that there was some explanation, some reason behind it all, but in the end, there wasn't. She chose to betray me. She chose to break our trust. "I don't expect you to forgive me," she said quietly. "I don't expect everything to be okay right now, but I want to make it right. I'll do anything. Just tell me what you need." I studied her for a moment, trying to read her. Was she sincere, or was this just another act, another attempt to get out of trouble? I didn't know anymore. But in the silence between us, I could hear the desperation in her voice. It felt real. "You can't make it right, Alicia," I said, the words heavy in the room. "Not like this. Not just by saying sorry and promising things will change. You shattered everything between us." She looked down at her hands, her fingers twisting together nervously. "I know, and I'm not asking you to forget. I know that's impossible, but I need you to understand that I didn't want to lose you. I didn't mean to hurt you." "I know you didn't mean to," I said, trying to keep my voice steady, trying to control the anger that still burned in my chest. "But you did. And now I have to figure out if I can even look at you the same way again." Alicia nodded slowly, like she already knew that the answer might be no. The silence stretched between us, unbearable. I could hear my own breath, slow and heavy, as I processed everything. This wasn't just about betrayal anymore. It was about trust, and how much of it I had left. Could I ever trust her again? Could we rebuild anything at all? Or was everything too broken? "I don't want to end this," Alicia said, her voice almost pleading now. "Please don't leave me like this." "I don't know what I want, Alicia," I admitted, shaking my head. "I need time. I need space to think." "I can give you that," she whispered. "I'll wait, Alec. I'll wait for as long as it takes. But please don't just give up on us." I looked at her, really looked at her for the first time in days. She was still the woman I had loved, the woman I had built a life with, but I wasn't sure if I could ever trust her again. And that hurt more than anything. I didn't know if we had a future. I didn't know if we even had a past worth saving. "I'm not giving up on us," I said quietly, "but I need time. I can't make any promises right now." Alicia nodded again, her eyes brimming with tears. "I understand. I'll wait. I'll wait however long it takes, Alec." I didn't know if that was true. I didn't know if I could make it work, or if I even wanted to. But right now, I needed distance. I needed clarity. I needed to figure out if I could still love her, or if everything between us had already ended. With a final glance at her, I turned and walked out of the apartment. The door clicked shut behind me, and as I stood in the hallway, I felt a strange sense of finality. This wasn't over, but it wasn't the beginning either. I had a decision to make, and I couldn't rush it. For now, all I could do was keep walking, keep moving forward, and hope that someday, somehow, the answers would come. I spent the next few weeks in a haze. Every day felt like I was walking through fog, unable to find my bearings. There was a part of me that wanted to reach out to Alicia to see if things could go back to some version of normal. But then, just as quickly, the memories of everything she had done, the lies, the betrayal, would hit me like a freight train, and I'd pull back again, retreating into myself. I stayed at my friend's apartment for a while, just to get away from everything, but eventually, I needed to go back to my place. I couldn't keep running. I didn't have the energy for it anymore. The apartment felt empty, quieter than I remembered, but I needed to be there. I needed to be alone, to think without distractions. The silence was deafening, though. The echoes of Alicia's laughter, the sound of her moving through the apartment, the soft hum of our everyday life together. It all felt like it belonged to someone else now. I still couldn't wrap my head around it. She was the person I had built my world around. She was supposed to be my partner, my equal, and now, she was just a stranger. I threw myself into work. At least there, I could distract myself. My boss kept telling me I was doing fine, that I seemed to be handling everything well, but I wasn't. I wasn't fine. I was barely functioning. Every email, every meeting, every phone call felt like it was happening on autopilot. I couldn't focus. I couldn't focus on anything anymore except for the fact that my life had been ripped apart, and I was left to pick up the pieces. Then, one evening, about a month after everything had fallen apart, I got a text from Alicia. I hadn't heard from her in days, and even then, the messages had been short, like she was waiting for me to make the first move. But this text was different. "Can we talk?" Just those 3 words, but they felt like a punch to the gut. I stared at the screen, my thumb hovering over the reply button. I wanted to ignore it. I wanted to keep pushing her away, to keep pretending that I could move on without her. But the truth was, I wasn't ready to let go. Not yet. I took a deep breath and replied, "Where?" The message came almost immediately. "I'll come to you." I didn't know why, but I agreed. Maybe I just needed answers, or maybe I was fooling myself into thinking that talking to her would bring some kind of closure. I didn't know, but I was tired of living in this limbo, of being stuck in the uncertainty of what we were, what we had been. She arrived a little after 7 p.m. She knocked gently, almost timidly, and I found myself standing frozen in the hallway for a moment, unsure if I was ready to face her. But I opened the door. Alicia stood there, her hands clasped in front of her, her eyes red as if she had been crying. She looked smaller, somehow fragile. Not the confident woman I had known, but someone who had been worn down by her own mistakes. "I didn't know if you'd want to see me," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. But I couldn't stay away. "I've been thinking about us, about everything, and I can't just pretend like nothing happened." I stepped aside and let her in. She hesitated before crossing the threshold, like she wasn't sure if she still belonged here. Maybe she didn't. We sat down in the living room, the tension thick between us. I didn't know where to start. There were so many things left unsaid, so many questions that I didn't have answers to. But the silence felt worse than anything else. "I'm sorry," Alicia said suddenly, breaking the quiet. "I know I've said that before, but I need you to understand. I was wrong. I messed up. I don't know what got into me. It's like I wasn't thinking. I didn't stop to think about how much I was hurting you, how much I was risking. And now look where we are." I looked at her, really looked at her. She wasn't the same person I had known. There was guilt, yes, but there was also something else in her eyes, something like desperation, like she was begging for forgiveness. "You don't get it, Alicia," I said, my voice rough with emotion. "It wasn't just about the lies. It was about everything. I gave you everything, and you threw it all away. You made a choice, and I have to live with the consequences of that." She nodded slowly, her eyes glistening. "I know, and I hate myself for it. I hate that I hurt you like this. You don't deserve any of it. But please, Alec, don't give up on me. Don't give up on us. I shook my head, trying to push the emotions down. I don't know if I can do that, Alicia. I don't know if I can ever trust you again. Her face fell at my words, and I felt a pang of guilt. But it wasn't the guilt of someone who had wronged her. It was the guilt of someone who still cared, someone who wanted to make it right, but couldn't see a way forward. I understand, she said softly. I know I don't deserve another chance, but I'm asking you for one anyway. Please. I didn't know what to say. I didn't know if I could give her that chance. I didn't know if I was ready to open myself up to that kind of hurt again. But as I sat there, staring at the woman I had once loved, I realized something. I didn't have to make a decision tonight. I didn't have to figure everything out in one conversation. I'm not saying yes, I finally said, but I'm not saying no either. I need time to think. I need to figure out what I want, what we could even be, if anything. Alicia looked like she was about to say something, but she stopped herself. She just nodded, her expression softening a little. I can wait, she said quietly. I'll wait, Alec, for however long it takes. And with that, she stood up to leave. But before she left, she gave me one last look. Something sad, something vulnerable. And I couldn't help but feel a part of me reaching out to her. I didn't want to feel this way, but I did. I couldn't just shut it off. When the door closed behind her, I was left standing in the same silence I had been living in for weeks. The uncertainty was still there, heavy and unrelenting. But somehow, in that moment, I felt like maybe, just maybe, there was a way forward. It wasn't going to be easy. Hell, it was going to be damn hard. But I couldn't just throw it all away without trying. I didn't know where this was headed, but I knew that for the first time in a long time, I wasn't alone in the decision. I was still holding on to something. And maybe that was the first step. Weeks passed, and I found myself trapped in a constant battle between my heart and my head. Alicia's words echoed in my mind. I'll wait. And she did. Every day, without fail, I'd get a text or a message asking how I was doing, asking if I was ready to talk again. Part of me resented her for it. The other part, the part one couldn't shut off, was desperate to hear from her. But I couldn't go back. I couldn't simply pretend like things would magically go back to the way they were before. Every time I thought about it, I'd remember the pain, the lies she told, the betrayal that cut deeper than I ever thought was possible. And I couldn't forget it. I wasn't even sure if I wanted to. Alicia wasn't the same person she had been, and neither was I. One evening, almost a month after our last conversation, she showed up at my apartment unannounced. I hadn't expected it. I wasn't prepared for it. I opened the door to find her standing there, eyes puffy like she hadn't slept in days. Her hair was disheveled, and her posture was defeated. I need to talk, she said, her voice trembling. Please, Alec, just hear me out. I didn't want to do this. But something about the way she looked, the way her voice cracked, it got to me. I stepped aside and let her in, though I had no idea what to expect. We stood in silence for a moment, neither of us quite knowing where to begin. Her eyes wandered around the room, like she was trying to find something familiar in a place that no longer felt like home. I don't expect you to forgive me, she began, her words coming out in a rush. I don't deserve it, but I need to tell you everything, Alec. The truth. All of it. I nodded, my arms crossed tightly over my chest. There was a part of me that didn't want to hear what she had to say. But there was another part, a weaker part, that needed to hear it. I needed to understand why. I lied to you, she continued, her voice shaking with the weight of her confession. Not just about the affair. That was bad enough. But there were other things too. Things I kept from you. Things that I thought would keep you from leaving me. I raised an eyebrow, not quite understanding where she was going with this. I wasn't just afraid of losing you, she said, her voice low and almost apologetic. I was afraid of facing myself. I was afraid of confronting the fact that I had become someone I didn't recognize, someone I didn't want to be. And instead of being honest with you, I ran. I pushed you away. And I thought, if I lied enough, if I kept pretending, I could fix everything. But I couldn't. I didn't speak, just let her continue. My emotions were all over the place. Anger, frustration, confusion, even a little pity. I didn't know what to feel. I was selfish, she said quietly, and I am so sorry for everything. For the lies, for the pain, for hurting you. I could see it then, the depth of her regret. She wasn't just asking for forgiveness. She was asking for the chance to make things right. But could I give her that chance? Could I even begin to consider a future with her after everything? I had no idea, and honestly, I wasn't sure if I wanted to. I've been to therapy, she said, surprising me. I've been working on myself. I know it doesn't fix what I did, but I want you to know that I'm trying to be a better person. For me. For us, if you'll let me. I stared at her for what felt like an eternity. The silence between us was suffocating, but I couldn't find the words. Could I trust her again? Could I go back to the person I had been, the one who believed in her, in us? I'd spent so many nights wondering if I should walk away for good. But here she was, standing in front of me, broken and vulnerable. I don't know if I can forgive you, Alicia, I finally said, my voice steady but thick with emotion. I don't know if I can ever forget what you did. Her face fell at my words, and I could see the fear in her eyes. But she didn't interrupt. She didn't try to make excuses. She just waited for me to say more. But I'm willing to try, I said, and the weight of the decision hit me like a punch to the gut. I wasn't promising her anything. I wasn't saying that everything would be okay, or that we could fix everything. But I was willing to give us a chance, not for her, but for me. To see if I could get past the betrayal. To see if we could rebuild something. Anything that was worth saving. I don't want to go through this again, I added, my voice quiet. If we're going to try, we have to be honest with each other. No more lies. No more secrets. I promise, she whispered, her voice barely audible. And just like that, the tension between us shifted. It wasn't gone, but it was different. The weight of the past still hung over us, but we had both made a decision. We were choosing to move forward. But it wasn't easy. It wasn't some perfect reconciliation where we kissed and everything was magically okay. There were still moments of doubt, moments where I wondered if I was making the biggest mistake of my life. But I was committed. We were committed. Alicia stayed at my place that night, but we didn't do anything more than talk. There were no promises made except that we would take it one step at a time. And maybe that was enough. The road ahead was uncertain. But for the first time in a long time, I felt like there was a chance, a real chance that we could rebuild. Maybe not to what we had, but something new, something better. I didn't know what the future held, and I didn't expect everything to be perfect. But I was willing to try, and for the first time, that felt like enough.